What are the different types of alimony, or as we refer to it in California, spousal support you may have to pay? So there's going to be temporary spousal support, and then there's going to be permanent spousal support. The temporary spousal support, that is something that's going to occur early in the case. If you're going through a divorce and you are the primary breadwinner, the other side may file a request for order requesting temporary spousal support. When temporary spousal support is done, it is typically done via the same calculator that is used for child support. And by nature, this temporary spousal support is not a final order, and we still have the ability to go to trial on the issue of what that number is going to be long term. The other side of it, permanent spousal support, this is spousal support from a judgment or from a stipulated final agreement, where this is going to be the spousal support number for a certain period of time. Most typically, if you were married for 10 or fewer years, it's going to be half the length of the marriage, while if you were married for more than 10 years, which is what we consider a long-term marriage in the state of California, this number will go on indefinitely. Now, I do want to give one piece of advice here. If you were in a long-term marriage, when it comes to spousal support, the courts are unable to terminate spousal support, but they are able to set the number to 0. The factors that determine how much spousal support you will actually pay are very specific and financial in nature. Ultimately, there is more than a dozen factors that go into a final spousal support number. But the most common jumping out point, if we use DissoMaster, it will give us a range or a tentative number of what spousal support should look like. Typically, what the judge is going to look at is both parties' earning capacity and what their roles were during marriage. If you were the sole breadwinner and she was a stay-at-home mom, the judge is going to lean more towards getting her spousal support to ensure she can get onto her feet. Now, if you both earned money and you earned equally during the marriage, the judge may look at that and say, hey, we're splitting this 50-50. The other situation we see quite frequently is a situation where one spouse during the marriage took a little bit of a bump in income to provide more support around the home. Now, traditionally, this has been the wife, where maybe she isn't aggressive in the growth in her career, or she steps out of her profession for a few years, and the judge can take that into account. But we're seeing this more and more. Over 70% of college graduates are women, and the vast majority of advanced degrees are coming from women now. So we're starting to see more and more men who are taking this role, taking a step back. So if you're going through this situation and spousal support's being discussed, as a man, it's not abnormal anymore for spousal support to be owed to you. Can I modify my spousal support after divorce? The answer is yes. So I'll talk about it in terms of a judgment has been entered and you want to modify spousal support. The two most common situations where spouse support is modifiable would be, number one is the loss of job. And we saw this a lot during COVID, and we've seen this as we move into kind of the AI revolution where companies are downsizing or roles no longer exist. When a situation like this happens and you unwillingly need to take a reduction in income to continue working, or you have to move jobs and that forces your income to reduce, you can go back to the court and say, hey, change in circumstance, lost my job. I've seen this with salespeople. We had an individual who worked in tech sales for nearly 20 years and made quite a bit of money. But coming out of COVID, they eliminated his role, and he ended up taking a job at a car dealership that saw his income cut in half. When his income was cut in half, we were able to go back in and say, hey, there's been a material change in circumstance, and the judge lowered the spousal support. And the second option, or the second most common situation we see, is retirement. You are allowed to retire. Now, that doesn't mean spousal support is going to be set to 0, but recently we had a physician who was paying nearly $10,000 a month in spousal support, and he was of the age of retirement. Now, you aren't going to be able to retire early to avoid spousal support, but if you're of retirement age, if you're in your late 50s to mid 60s and you're ready to retire, you can go back into the court and say, hey, I'm now retiring and I need this spousal support adjusted. And depending on the financial circumstance and the length of the marriage and how long you've been paying spousal support, they may reduce it or completely eliminate spousal support to allow you to retire. How frequently is spousal support awarded in California? Well, quite frankly, it is usually very, very common because in a marriage, a lot of times one or both spouses will take specific roles that may deter or lessen their income earning capacity. Now, if you're in a short term marriage, a lot of times you're going to see a very, very short term spousal support award. If you were married for 5 years, you may look to 2 to 3 years worth of spousal support. Where in a long term marriage, they cannot terminate spousal support, they can only set it to zero. Now, in saying this, there are a lot of situations where through negotiation of community property, that spousal support is set to zero because trade-offs have been made. So the court has the ability to order it, and it's very common, but a very common situation we do see is negotiation where you may give up something in order for spousal support to be set at zero indefinitely. Understanding spousal support in California. If you're going through a divorce or you're struggling with your spousal support payments, click the link in the description or call the number in the description so that you can schedule a free case evaluation with our team so we can discuss your options and how we can best serve you.